Hello and welcome to Upstack America's Oracle EBS Financials Functional Training. My name is Bob and I'm the lead senior consultant for Upstack America. And with me today I have Victor, who is also a senior consultant. And today we are handling lesson 1 of Accounts Payables module. Victor, please walk us through.
Thank you, Bob, for the introduction, and I welcome everybody to this lesson in our Oracle Financials Functional Training series. And as Bob has mentioned, this is our first lesson in Oracle Account Payables. So this is going to be an introduction. We're going to get familiar with, I guess, where AP lies in the grand scheme of things in the application suite of Oracle. And we are also going to see a few things about the setups that we are going to be doing. Okay. So, just to go back a bit, we know that AP is one of the subsidiary ledgers. In an accounting sense, it is what can be called the purchases ledger. In Oracle, it is a sub-ledger module in the application suite. So we have general ledger, and then we have the subsidiary ledgers, the AR, the AP, and we have other modules such as fixed assets and cash management, purchase orders, etc. So this is just a reminder that AP is a sub-ledger. Now, I'm pretty sure you guys should be familiar with the two parts of the business cycle. This has to be something maybe that you've discussed with Robert. And we want to see the role of AP in terms of where it falls in the business cycle. So we know we have two parts of the business cycle, the order to cash, and then we have the procurement to pay, or the P2P part of the business cycle. And as we are going to see that what AP does falls in the procurement to pay part of the business cycle. So what we can see right now on the screen are the steps in the P2P cycle, where we have the first step can be a requisition. Maybe a requisition can be raised if within the company they need to restock something. Maybe they've run out of office supplies, so they raise a requisition. And then once the rec is approved, they can do a purchase order, which then they will send to a particular vendor. And then the vendor will send them the goods. If that's the vendor that they settle on, they will send them the goods, and the company will say that they have received the item. Once they have received the item, then the vendor will generate an invoice for them and send it to them. The company will receive the invoice and enter it, and then they will generate a payment which they will pay the vendor. It could be a check, it could be an electronic transfer. We also have the reconciliation part of the cycle, where they make sure that the payments have been done or the payments have been cleared. And then finally, they can generate reports showing all this accounting information, or the other kind of reports. They might be standard reports, etc. So whatever you are seeing in brackets indicates the various modules that are involved in each of these steps of the P2P part of the business cycle. So from raising a requisition or a rec all the way to indicating that you have received the item receipt. You can see PO, which means that that is a part that is managed or conducted using the purchasing module. Okay. Now, AP falls into the next two steps where we enter invoices and we do payments. So that is the role that the account payables module plays in the P2P part of the business cycle. The reconciliation part is conducted using the cash management. They should probably say CE instead of CM. And then, as we know, because we have already covered general ledger receives accounting information from all these external sub-ledger modules, and we generate reports from all the information that we have in general ledger. So in the grand scheme of things, that's basically where AP falls, and that is the role of the account payables module. So what we are saying is that AP is involved in, we can say, managing the relationship between the enterprise and vendors. We can say vendors or suppliers. Okay, so that's the role that AP plays, and we are going to see that in accounts payable, we have its kind of sub-ledger data which it stores. We manage suppliers or vendors, and then we have invoices, and then we also have payments. So when you think of account payables, think of it as playing a role of or managing the relationship between a particular enterprise and the vendors or the suppliers that it deals with. What I'm trying to say is also that now, for example, if you're talking about receivables, then receivables is managing the relationship between the enterprise and customers. When you have something like the cash management module, then it's managing the relationship between the enterprise and banks, or managing things like bank accounts. So that's what I'm trying to explain on this slide. Okay, on this slide, we can say that the Oracle, for the Oracle payables modules, we can say that we have the parts that you as a financial consultant will be dealing with, and we also have the parts which the end users will be dealing with. Okay, so end users, who are the accountants, or maybe the accountants who work for the firm which you're going to be doing the implementation for, they'll be using the AP module to do what? To enter invoices, right? They are going to do payments using AP. They are going to enter and manage vendors. They are also going to be managing or using bank accounts, and then they might also be generating payables reports. Okay, so these are things that end users will be doing using the AP module. I know I said that cash management module is the one that manages bank accounts, but since you're doing payments using AP, these payments have to come from a particular bank account, right? So even in AP, you have bank accounts. Cash management and bank accounts are owned by the cash management module, but you do have bank accounts involved, because when you're making payments, then these payments have to come from a specific bank account that you define. Okay, on the other hand, you have the things that the financial consultant will do, or the setups that the financial consultants will have to configure. We'll see things such as operating units. You have to define those. You have to define payables options. You have to define another thing called financial options. We have another thing called payment terms, and also distribution sets. Okay, so this is not everything that you're going to have to define. These are just examples, and we're going to see that some of them here are required or mandatory, while others can be optional. For example, distribution sets can be optional, but you have to define operating units and financial options. So as a financial consultant, these are things that you should know and you should be familiar with. Now, you should also be familiar with end user stuff, right? Because you need to know how what you set up in these configuration areas affects what the end users are doing, okay? So you need to know, for example, how payment terms affect your payments, okay? Or how financial options affect your payments and such. Because, for example, if you are doing an implementation where it's the client is moving from a different ERP system, maybe they are using SAP and now they want to start using Oracle, then you have to train end users, okay, on how to use Oracle, and you have to train them on how to enter invoices or make payments, etc. So as a consultant, you have to know both ends, okay? But in terms of configuration, these are some of the things that we are going to be dealing with. So this is the general outline of what we are going to do in terms of setting up our AP module for training. First, we have to create legal entities and operating units. Now, luckily for us, we already created our legal entities under Maskani, and we did this because we had to demonstrate the intra-company transactions, okay? So that's a step that we are going to skip, creating legal entities. But we are still going to look at maybe where legal entities fall in the grand scheme of things, or the relationship between legal entities and other organizations that we are going to set up. And what we are going to do in this first step is setting up operating units. And as we continue, we are going to understand clearly what operating units are. But for now, also, you can think that operating units, they play the same role as what we have seen data access set does in general ledger. They segregate data for the subledgers, okay? In general ledger, we segregate data, i.e. we segregate ledgers using the data access set. In subledger modules, we use operating units, but let's not get too deep into that right now. So this is going to be the first step. The second step is going to be to grant access to these operating units through responsibilities, okay? So just the same way where we have a data access set, then we assign it to a responsibility, then we assign that responsibility to the user. That's the same way we are going to do for payables, whereby we have the operating unit that we have created. We create a responsibility and assign that operating unit to that particular responsibility, and then we give it to a particular user, so then that user can be able to access the subledger data for that particular operating unit. Once we have done that, just like we did for GL, after we assign responsibility, after we give the user responsibility and access to the ledger, then we can do our setups, okay? So we are going to go and do and configure financial options and payables options. We have payable system setups also that we are going to configure. And then the next step is to open a period in payables, to open the first period in payables so that we can be able to carry on with our setups and entering invoices and making payments. So you can see that these first 4 steps are in black, and this last one, which is configuring optional client-specific options, is in white. What I was trying to show is that in order to have a functional AP setup that we can use for training and learning, then we have to do these first 4 steps. These first 4 steps are going to be mandatory in our setup. Okay, so we have to do all these first 4 steps so that we can have an AP module that is functioning properly. Then, of course, there are going to be other specific options that respective clients might want, and which you can configure after you have done these first 4 mandatory setups. So a lot of these first 4 steps should be done with utmost care. Okay, when thinking about it in terms of a real implementation, because once you do a lot of these first 4 steps, they cannot be changed if you're doing a real implementation. So these are things that you don't wanna mess up in a real project. I mean, for us, because we are learning, we are not doing this exactly as how it would be done in a project. So these are things, for example, in an actual implementation where you have to do a lot of information gathering and requirements gathering before any setup can be done, all right? And I mean, I guess it's for all of them. But then now, this client-specific options, the good thing is that you can change them once you have a working AP module, right? So just remember that these first 4 steps are mandatory in order to have a fully functioning AP module. And then after that, now you can go and implement any other specific options that the client might want. Okay, so we are going to look at the role that legal entities play much more deeply in our next session. But just as a reminder, we already know that we have set up our legal entities, and we know that in order to use the sub-ledger modules, we have to have our legal entities, okay? Because it's only after that particular entity, whether it's a private company or a government agency, has been legally recognized in whatever jurisdiction it seeks to operate, only then can it now enter into third-party transactions with clients and with vendors, okay? So we already know that this is something that we have done, but we are going to see now the relationship, for example, between legal entities and operating units and other organizational entities that we can set up in Oracle. But for now, that's a good introduction on how we are going to implement our account payables module. So Bob, unless you have something to add, we can end our session there.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.